me say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for doing this like 2 days after
That's
you get
fine.
back from this crazy trip.
That's all right.
But hopefully we make it easy.
We'll make it easy.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's all material you know. Good to go.
Yeah.
Good to go? All right. So we're going to start in the most logical place, and that is the moment that you met Madeline.
Oh,
Tell
wow.
me what that was like, what you thought.
Oh, my gosh.
Take us back.
It was a blind date at the University of Texas for a football game, and I went, wow. She's a beautiful young woman. I mean, I can tell you exactly what she was wearing that day, even to the hairdo, and it was magic. And
what was she wearing that day?
little red shoes, what they call an A-line red dress, a white sweater with a collar with a little notch in the front, and it was green and red checks, and it was just spectacular. Yeah, I can picture it today.
And why was she? You know, I'm sure you had many dates and interests in your life at that point. How old were you, and why was she different than anything you'd met before?
Just the spirit. Her green eyes, they sparkle. It's just, they lit up the room. Lit me up too. I mean, it's just, there was something magic, and it just worked. And then we just started dating, and the rest is history. I mean, I met her in October 24th, 1965, and we got engaged in February.
So usually when people meet, maybe not of your generation, but of ours, they're very guarded, they're very worried about getting hurt, they have to play games, blah, 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 blah. So was this an easy relationship in terms of dating, or, and did you know very quickly? Was there one moment where you're like, I'm going to marry this woman?
I knew she was something special, and yeah, it just was, I wasn't going to let her go. And, you know, it wasn't difficult, if that's what you mean. I mean, I wasn't worried. She was, you know, warm and, you know, friendly. I mean, it's just open.
Was it that she was, you know, a very trustworthy person, had a fairly healthy upbringing as a child, or having?
I think, you know.
What do you think are the things that from her childhood and youth turned her into a person where you thought, wow, this is extraordinary?
Well, you know, a lot of it, you know, I do go back to her upbringing, and it's just the rock solid foundation upon which she was brought up, and trusting, but, you know, cautiously, you know, not
foolish.
Not
right?
foolish. Thank you for helping me. No.
But more, but what do you think were the elements of her unique upbringing that made her who she was at such a young age?
I think it goes back. She always talks about her father, and I always call her Aubrina because she was the spitting image of her father, and he was probably the greatest man I ever knew. He was just an incredible man who brought himself up from nothing. And she would always talk about the steel rod of Aubrey down her back. And I you know, very, very close to her father. He was just an incredible human being. And that's where she got a lot of who she is and what she's all about.
And you said as a child, she was a real self-starter. What was it, making her own clothes? What were the unique things about her as a child?
Well, I saw the product of that because, you know, she made her wedding dress. You know, that's a whole other story. But, you know, when she was 12 or 13, she didn't like the way her mother sewed her clothing, didn't like the clothes she made, wasn't very, you know, the hem would come out of the dress kind of a thing. And her mother finally said, if you think you can do better, here's the sewing machine, here's the patterns, go at it. And she did. You know, she could do anything.
And that gave her kind of a love of
fashion.
Yeah. Or talk about that a little bit. So what did that do for her?
Well, you know, it started, you know, and one, it was just being able to look good and dress well and have nice clothing because, you know, they worked hard for what they had. And so um, she said she'd like to go be back a fashion designer. I mean, that's how she got into the fashion industry when we moved to San Diego. I mean, I gave her, a little self-confidence. She needed a little self-confidence, but she's good.
So talk about what happened on your wedding day. First of all, what was the proposal like?
Wow.
Were you nervous as heck, or or
Yeah.
were you confident, or what?
I didn't know what it was. Just, I knew I wanted her and asked her that. I asked her, and she said yes. And it was in February, and I can remember I had an uncle that helped me get the ring because he was a jeweler in San Francisco. And yeah. Now the wedding day that was another one of his.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, right? So
yeah.
So talk about, where were you at that time? What were you doing? Where were you living? Your job?
Well, I was still in the high college. I got graduated, commissioned, and married all on the same day because I was at University of Texas on a Navy scholarship. The NROTC program, just like the Naval Academy, you couldn't get married until you were commissioned. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen because I had my orders changed many times because I started in the flight program, and they wanted to send me to Pensacola to go fly, and they needed pilots. And so when I was going to go fly, it kept changing, and so it got down to the last couple of days before graduation, and I had one final that I had to pass in order to graduate, and of course it was the last one. And so at that point, I was thinking we were going to have to wait until I got back for Christmas. I proposed in February. We became engaged in February. Of course, before I did that, I had to ask her father for permission.
How'd that go?
He kind of knew something was coming.
Right.
And I'd down there, and he's a master mechanic. And so I'd gone down there. She had gone back to San Antonio for that semester. And I was at Austin, so I was making the road trips to Austin and San Antonio all the time. And so I'd gone down for the weekend. And I guess Madeline knew something was coming. But nobody says anything to anyone. So her dad was working on the car, and so I spent the whole day working with him on the car, trying to get the courage up. We had dinner, and then we went into the living room, and he's sitting at one end of the couch, and I'm at the other, and we're kind of looking at one another. And he goes, "Do you want a beer?" He was the icebreaker. I said, "Yeah, that would be good." And so then I said, "Mr. Hall, I'd like permission to marry your daughter." And he kind of he knew the question was coming, I guess. And he said, "Permission." Yeah, and I asked her to marry me.
How long after you asked?
That day.
How long?
That day. Yeah, I was ready.
So after that, then, were you then just in a waiting mode?
Wait, no, that was February. The idea was we'd get married when I graduated in June, because then you're going to go wherever the Navy sends you. I didn't know where the Navy was going to assign me. Although I knew that at that point I was going to go to Pensacola to flight school. And so, we'd already met. Then we went down to Fort Sam Houston, and we were originally going to get married on the 5th of June. And then my orders started changing, and I had this one class I wasn't sure I was going to graduate. And I needed it to pass. I didn't think, I needed to graduate. And so I had to pass the final, to pass the course, to graduate, to get commissioned, to get married. And it was just, at this point, it was. Anyway, so it all worked out. I knew 2 days before, on the 2nd of June, I knew that I'd passed. Madeline and I had been driven down to Houston, and Madeline calls me the all or nothing man. This was all. it wasn't nothing, but it was, it was everything. How many people get married commissioned? And so it even gets wilder than this because, or maybe it was the 1st of June, trying to timeline it back because I know we were sitting on the couch in our family room, and it's like about 1 o'clock in the morning, and Madeline didn't want to wait until Christmas. So let's get married now. Okay. And this is like the 1st of June, and we get married on the 4th. Well, we get my mother up, and she's all business, right? Okay, fine. Here's what you got to do. You got to go to get a blood test. You got to get a marriage license, and we got to. So that morning we get up. She calls a family doctor who got us in for blood tests and marriage license. Madeline had never flown in an airplane before. So we took her to Hobby Airport in Houston. She flew to San Antonio. Her mother meets her at the airport. They go right to the fabric store because Madeline's going to make her wedding dress. Yeah. And so she starts sewing. And my father, and then I call the chaplain, tell him we'd like to get married on the 4th. And he said, I got a time slot for you at the chapel. And it all worked. And so the morning of graduation, I'm going around to my friends who were in the class and who were from San Antonio and asking them to be in my wedding. And I had my best man from Houston who drove up for the wedding. And it was like, it all happened. And we go into the chapel at Fort Sam Houston, and it's full of flowers. They weren't our flowers. They were for the wedding that was following. And so it was magic. And then we had our honeymoon was Corpus Christi, of all great places. We went down there so she could get her ID card and I can get my ID card, and we could get our household goods shipped, which really was, nothing. And then we came back. I drove to Pensacola, and she followed me 3 days later after I'd found an apartment.
And so before your daughter, how many places were you? What was life like for her? The before and the after.
Well, she was
being married to Dick Reass.
She was, the new Navy wife, and I was really in training. I started off in Pensacola, went up to Meridian, Mississippi. There are all kinds of side stories about that we won't share right now. Then I could do everything except land really well. I could land, but not on a carrier kind of a thing. I wear glasses, and I kind of memorize the eye charts to get through the flight program, which is not what you want to do.
Yikes.
I could land when I was well rested, when my eyes I used to do eye exercises to strengthen my eye. I had astigmatism. Anyway, so then I got assigned, and we went to school in Glencoe, Georgia. And then we went up to Newport, Rhode Island. So in the first year of our marriage, we were in Pensacola, Meridian, Brunswick, Georgia, Newport, Rhode Island, and went aboard our first ship assignment.
Somebody who basically had a fairly simple upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's in a million different places in your first moments of marriage. How does she handle all that? What kind of a partner was she in terms of, because even for you,
it was easy. She was great. I mean, we were together, we were young, we were in love, and that everything is going to work. And there were no, we were together all the time. It was an adventure. It was more than anything. I mean, the only thing was, I can remember our first anniversary in St. Augustine, Florida. She couldn't drink. She was only 20.
So how far along into the marriage did you have Alexis? How did you feel when you first found out you're going to be a dad?
It was 68. Alexis was born in September of 68. So it was 27 months after we were married. So it was, I'd just come back from a deployment, if you backtrack. In fact, Madeline was alone on her 21st birthday when I was in the Mediterranean. So I remember calling her from Gibraltar on her 21st birthday. It was, yeah.
So she had the first drink without
Absolutely.
Although then it might have been 18. But
No, it's 21, but yeah,
really,
yeah, yeah. We went different places, and you know, we, the first time we went to New Orleans was when we were in Pensacola, and of course we were with a lot of young couples just like us. I mean, we were living in a little apartment complex in Meridian, and they were all people in the flight program. So she was with all, and some of those people are lifelong friends. We've had them for 55 years.
so you do the things you're expected to do. You marry, and she is going to have your first child,
So, yeah.
and it's all exciting and all wonderful. What is it like the day that your child is born? And did you know something was wrong right away?
Not right away. I mean, we were up in the shipyard up in Boston, and so I think I broke the land speed record driving from Boston down to Newport, Rhode Island. It was about, I don't know, 75, 80 miles. And Lexus was a preemie. She was 5 pounds, 4 ounces. So she was a small baby, and she had what they call a genital stridor, which she, and she breathed. And so every time she would inhale, it was, and the doctors at Newport said something about she's Down syndrome, or think she is, but that's all they did. And when we got Alexis home, she was having a lot of troubles breathing, and so got hooked up with a local pediatrician, who, when he heard Alexis breathing in the background, said, "I'm coming out to your house." And he walked in, and the minute he took a look at her, he's calling Newport Hospital to send Alexis, putting in her an incubator. And at this point, Madeline says, well, of course, we had no idea what that meant, Downs. And so Madeline said something about Down syndrome. And Dr. Arno looked at her and said, I don't see the telltale signs, but we'll do a blood test. And my mother came, I think it was the next day or two, and when they got her in the hospital, and my mother drove the blood test up to Mass General up in Boston, so we could get the test results quicker. And then the results came back, and there were people that saying, get rid of her, pretend you don't have her. And that was the common practice back then. Put her in the shelf somewhere and forget about her and go on with your life, because it's just going to be too hard and too difficult.
And specifically, what would that mean? Institutionalized?
Put her in an institution, yeah. Just, warehouse her like she doesn't exist.
And so what specifically did Madeline say?
We can't do that. We both did. You can't do that. That's your child. How can you get rid of her? It's like you weren't good enough.
And how did you feel about her as a mom at that point?
Oh, she was amazing. She was amazing.
What were the specific things that she did that were kind of unique to how other mothers would have handled this?
It's a steel rod of Aubrey. I mean, we were crying on the outside, but inside with the resolve. I mean, she would go to the library and did incredible research on how to get the maximum development from Alexis. And Madeline sacrificed her youth. Maybe she's 21. Alexis was her career. How many women would really do that? I mean, it was hard. And first of all, we were 2,000 miles away from family. So there was nobody there to help her, and I'm going to sea, and she never wavered. She never wavered. And Alexis wasn't handicapped. We treated her like she was anybody else's child. And I read to her. I mean, I can still recite the Berenstain Bee book to you today from reading it over and over and over. She could do the same things. It just took her a little bit longer, or a lot longer, but she eventually learned how to read. Well, I didn't, that she couldn't read War and Peace, but she could read at the third grade level.
And what special patience did Madeline show in terms of raising her?
Incredible. I mean, because it was so hard. I mean, just over and over, multiple repetitions. Yeah. And Alexis was sick all the time. And so, there for a long time, people don't realize, but in 68, there was a pandemic too. And we had to wear masks in 68 and nobody could come in the house. Yeah. Yeah.
And was it unique to, was it Alexis's situation that made that particularly?
Because of her, vulnerability, her immune systems weren't as strong. And so, yeah. But Madeline was there the whole step of the way. I mean.
And what are some special, touching memories that come to mind when you think about her experiences as Alexis's mom?
Wow. Just, the way they interacted. I mean, she was always well dressed. Well, she didn't have the typical weight problems. She was always properly groomed, and we treated her like, and she was just our child. And that's all there was. It was interesting. It was very poignant on the flight back. I downloaded the 3 Yellowstone edition, and in the third, it brought me to tears. It's actually because it was right after the trip, and it's a picture of Kevin Costner and his son. I don't know if you're familiar with Yellowstone.
Yes.
And they're going out for this horseback ride, and the son says, "Case, this is." I really enjoy going out on these rides. I really look forward to them. And Costner says, "Well, I don't know how many more of these we'll be able to have together."
Oh. Right.
Okay, let's have another tear.
That's
I
a way
already
to
did
guilt.
it when Matt was talking.
Yeah, I mean, that really just struck me. Like, oh my, yeah, it did. And I said, because that's how many more times? Because we very getting off. I mean, one, because the dynamics in the family with Alexis and
Right.
and my being gone, and all he remembered, he won't have anything to do with the Navy because I was always gone.
Wow.
But part of the decision to stay in the Navy was based on Alexis.
And why is that?
Because medical care. Because she required a lot of medical care. And if I had gotten out, where was I going to get medical insurance for the pre-existing condition?
And Madeline must have worked very hard to make the most of what the Navy offered.
Oh yeah, I mean, although we did use civilian doctors, but they would cover the expenses. Because she needed specialized care. And then the other thing that came along and stayed along was, why did you stay for a full career? One is because you wanted to keep the benefits after you retire, but also because part of my retirement would be for Alexis if I were to die before her, so she wouldn't be a burden on Matthew. So you make those decisions. And it was so hard, turns out I had a good career. I had a very successful career. And it was hard, unusually hard on Madeline because she had the handicapped child. And she'll probably tell you, and she jokingly says this something, there's no logical reason we're still married.
Honey, I can relate.
No, really, because handicapped child, very young. I'm deployed a lot. And then I come back from Desert Storm, and I come back with one of those Desert Storm diseases that knocks me to the curb for over 2 years. And that wasn't fun. So we haven't had exactly a smooth sailing, as it will. No fair winds and following seas for a long time.
So why do you think it is that you're still married?
Because we click. We work together. I mean, she is. I need her, and I hope she needs me. Yeah.
And back to the things that Alexis was able to do because of Madeline's dedication.
Hmm.
You know, what were those things that you were told she'll never do that? That will never be her life.
Well, and we were told she would never know us. Crazy. She knew us. She learned how to read. She worked. I jokingly, she used to go to work with me on when she, she had her own apartment. Madeline and I was on a, but Madeline got involved with Hope House Foundation here. That was an incredible group, but that made her the happiest she'd ever been in her whole life, because she had her own apartment. In fact, I'd go there on Saturdays to go watch football games because Madeline's not a big football fan.
And so when the time came, how old was Alexis again when she?
36.
36. Which is remarkable. Did they give you a time when she was born that they said she?
No, we really never paid much attention to it. Yeah.
And so as hard as it is to recall these things, what was Madeline's reaction to what was happening? Was it sudden?
I mean, in regards to?
How was that time of Alexis passing?
Oh, it was a sudden. It was she had gone to work that day, and she was on a lunch break, and she'd finished lunch. She put up her lunchbox and was walking back to her workstation, and she literally collapsed on the ground. And somebody was there instantly. And when they got to her, she wasn't breathing, and she had no pulse. It's like somebody pulled the plug out of the wall. And before they could get her revived, it was over 12 minutes, and she was brain dead. And it was just bang. Oh.
So yes, that she's just suddenly
just died.
Passed.
Just collapsed. I was at work.
So what was Madeline's experience? Was it a phone call? Was it this
phone call?
And what happened after that? So what specifically happened?
I mean, I met her at the hospital, and I was at work. I jumped in my car, Virginia Beach General, and there she was, unconscious, wires everywhere, and come to the realization, this is it. She, flatline brain waves. Had to make the decision that terminate. And the most amazing thing was that the LifeNet, she made the decision to donate her organs. She was an amazing young woman, Alexis. I mean, she had a character, a spirit, and
So what were your specific memories of Madeline? And as a mother, I just can't even imagine.
she was crumbling, and we all were. But she picked herself up and got through it, and then grieved in quietly. Yeah. And
How was she as a support to you and to Matthew?
I think at this point she needed the support more. And it was much, much harder on her because she devoted her entire life to Alexis. Truly, that was her life. Everything, even in the way she interacts with us, we sometimes, I say, I'm not Alexis. But yeah, I got to understand, when that becomes your life for 35 years. Yeah. So.
And what were the times where it's so true when you're caring for somebody and there's so much of your life, and then literally it's poof.
Yeah.
All this time, what did that do to her?
I think she's, it was hard. It devastated her. It gave her time to reassess, what she could do, and that she could, for the first time in her life, she could focus on herself. I had already retired from the Navy, so she could breathe a little more freely. Smell the roses, or as Alexis would say, smell the coffee. Wake up and smell the coffee is what Alexis would say. Yeah.
So then comes this string of just seemingly amazing business accomplishments. How did you look at it through your eyes in terms of what she was doing and how she was, climbing the ladder and
She was, I know, part of the time when we were in Charleston, Madeline went back to college. And so she graduated in 1986 from the College of Charleston. She had to finish her final 2 years because I married her after her sophomore year. And so trying to go back to college after 30 some odd years, that was a challenge, but she graduated, cum laude. And then, so she came up here and got into banking, and was a rock star from the beginning. She did really well. She did really well.
And you say it's not necessarily because of her business acumen, but it was her relationship with people.
Interpersonal skills. Unbelievable interpersonal skills. I mean, she can be, I don't use the word tough, but it was a smooth tough. It wasn't like a punch you in the mouth tough. Firm, fair. I mean, she turned the first branch. When she got assigned a bank branch, it was the biggest one in the system, and she turned it around, and they reduced the staffing by 70%, and she increased productivity by 300%. You figure that one out.
And was it unique for a woman at this time? I mean,
No,
was she extraordinary?
Well, no, it was kind of a mishmash. It's a crossover, and then she did that for a while, and then she went into private banking, and she quickly became we kept going on these trips because she was a top performer, and we called her the queen of the little loans. But in fact, people came down from when it became Bank of America, and she was in private banking, and somebody came down that couldn't believe that this banker here in Hampton Roads could be producing this much loan volume over the people up in Northern Virginia. There's something had to be fishy. There wasn't. Yeah. And
was it just that she was such an empathetic, nurturing person that she could really have a genuine instinct about people and who she could trust? And what was it specifically that made her?
She listened. She could listen, and communicate. It wasn't all about her. It was about the customers. And she would do she didn't, it wasn't the 9-to-5 job for her. She would do things at home. She'd work at home. She'd work beyond, and it wasn't for any other altruistic. It wasn't for any other reason other than she felt she needed to give her clients their best. And a lot of her clients are now our friends. It's that kind of a relationship. And the woman that worked with her, who's going to be there tonight, Jackie Zalis, worked with my wife for 30 years. Yeah, followed her around the different banks, changed banks to go with her, changed banks twice to follow her. Yeah, it was cool.
So, what are some of if you could think of one, what would it be?
Oh my! It's got to be Ireland, but then it could be New Zealand, or it could be. We've had some incredible experiences together. I mean, Matthew talks about going to England and taking a MAC flight, military airlift command, and then spending 3 weeks in Europe with our British friends, driving all over. That was an incredible one.
What makes her a great travel companion?
Sense of adventure, appreciating cultures, and just it's such sense of adventure, really. Just You know, I jokingly say flexible is too rigid. She's not rigid.
God, that's a beautiful thing in life. For sure.
Yeah.
How has she made your life better?
How long have you got to hand? Listen, she's been there when I've needed her. Even when I haven't known I didn't need her. Even when I didn't know I needed her, she's been there. Every step of the way. And, you know, when I came back from Desert Storm, I came back with that horrible Gulf War disease, or brucellosis, and that was pretty horrible. I mean, she was there. She hung in there for a couple of years, and it was pretty crippling for the family too, because I was not a nice person to be around at that point, just because of all the impact of the disease on me. But she's always been there. I know she'll be there.
And when have you seen her just in absolute joy?
Oh, wow. There's just so many. I just, you know.
What brings her the most joy?
Being appreciated, and I mean, some of the trips I mean, we just had a great trip up to New York when she went up there to a trunk show with Brunello Cucinelli, and you know, I knew it was something special to her because she came from the fashion industry. But her comment to the gentleman who selected her to go on the trip and saying, "Who would have ever thought that this little Texas girl who didn't have anything, who had to make her own dresses, who had an interest in fashion, would one day be up at this the Bruno, you know, the trunk show for one of the leading designers in the world." And there were 8 people that were there for this private showing, and she was one of them. And that meant she was that was really something very special for her.
And so, never too old for these amazing, amazing accomplishments. I'm sure there are more to come.
Oh yeah.
And what lesson has she taught you about life?
Pick yourself up, move forward, and keep it going, keep it moving forward. Yeah, she's a very positive person. Very, you know, let's get through this. Yeah.
And if you could sum up in 1 or 2 words, which I know is impossible, but if you could think of a word that really embodies her.
Strong, caring, amazing. She's everything you could ever want in a human being. And she's giving. She really is giving. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Everything you could ever want in a human being, that's pretty damn good.
Pretty good.
That was amazing, Jack. You and Matthew are just lovely. Lovely,
Okay.
lovely. Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Not only that, she's like breathtakingly beautiful. She's a
Oh, yeah.
model.
Drop dead gorgeous.
Well done,
Yeah.
Dick.
Nice, nice.
I'm married up. The question was, what does she mean? I always say she's my anchor to windward. Now, what does that mean? When you put down an anchor, you know, that's to hold you fast, but things get really rough, you need to put down another anchor to windward. So she's the anchor to windward,
Nice.
to be there for you when things get rough.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dick, can you
hilarious.
say that again? She's your anchor to windward?
Yeah.
Say that to Leanne.
So explain it again, too.
Well, you know, Madeline is joking, said she's my anchor to windward. And what that means is when you go take a ship and you're going to, you know, want to stay in one place, you put down your anchor. And that's going to hold you fast. But when things get really rough, you need to put down another anchor to get you through the tough times. And that's the anchor to windward. That's the second anchor. And that's Madeline. She's that anchor to windward.
Beautiful.
She's there when it's tough.